and we're going to get
Awesome.
into our conversation, which I am super excited about. So I'm going to go ahead and start this session, webinar, conversation, whatever you want to really call it, right? But
Hmm.
we are having a conversation about Black investment, Black wealth, Black business, all of that. And of course, when we are recording this, this is June 18th, which is the day before Juneteenth. And so we know a lot of people are thinking about Black freedom, right? And what I wanted to do was have a conversation around not just the hype around Juneteenth, right? Like, let's talk about how we really acquire freedom, right? And a lot of that has to do with financial freedom and knowing how to make investments and things like that. So I am super excited to have Dr. Leonard Lightfoot joining us for this conversation. I have known Leonard now for a little while and have just been super impressed with Leonard, all that you have done. You're co-founders of the Black Coffee Company, which I know you're going to be talking about. So I am just honored that we're going to be having this conversation. And of course, your links and information will be right in the, as people are watching this post live. So they'll be able to go right to you all. A couple other things that I'll mention as we're getting started is this is brought to you by my organization, which is a nonprofit organization, My Natural Me. And one of the things that we do is we are all about helping women and girls be empowered, have resources so that they can thrive in the world today. And we do that through a number of different ways: financial literacy, career development, empowerment. So I'm excited to be doing this in partnership with my other business, which is DMV Business Crossing Network. So, with that said, that was a mouthful, right? So, with that said, let's get into the conversation. Leonard, I would love for you to just tell people who you are. And yeah, let's start there. Let's start with the
Okay. Okay.
introduction.
Yeah. Thank you for the great introduction. Yeah, like you mentioned, we've known each other at least since 2020, right?
Yeah.
I think you was in Atlanta and you went to the coffee shop and you're like, hey, I know a black coffee owner in the DMV. You should connect. And I happen to be in the DMV, and
Yeah.
it's been like a great friendship, great partnership ever since then. You have been truly living your mission in terms of amplifying businesses, making sure we make these connections, making sure, we had numerous meetings with myself, right, in terms of making sure I'm tapped in, right? So thank you
Yes.
for all your efforts and
Absolutely.
truly
Absolutely.
appreciate it. So a little bit about myself, Leonard Lightfoot, born and raised in Los Angeles, California. Went to Xavier University of Louisiana for undergrad, went to Michigan State for graduate school, got my master's and PhD in electrical engineering. Started my career working at the Department of Defense in Ohio, and it wasn't until 2015 when our friends and we went to Motown Museum and we learned the story of the Gordy family. Um, Specifically, not just about the different hits and how they recorded, but what really resonated with us was the fact that they actually pulled their resources together to launch Motown. Um, and at the time, we didn't know that that was how it started. And we look back at those times, we wasn't able to get access to loans, but that was kind of the only way out. And we looked at each other, our friends from high school and college. We've been friends for over a decade, and we never really pulled our resources together for the better, right? And so we took that energy and we started brainstorming. At the time, we were we still geographically separated, and so we would just get on these virtual calls and brainstorm ideas. And then one day, the concept of like the investment club came up. Let's just learn the stock market. Let's pull our resources together to invest in the stock market. So we started very small, right? $50 a month, and we will meet once a month to decide where we wanted to place that investment. And the power of doing that at the time was because every single time you invest into a company, there's a transaction fee. So if you pull your resources together, whether you buy one share or 100 shares, it's the same transaction fee. And so for us, He was like, let's pull our money together and buy like 100 shares versus buying one share each, right? And we just kind of losing money on that end. And so from there, we started to see the passive success, right? We started researching about the microelectronics industry, started researching about autonomy, the electric vehicles. So we started investing in Tesla, we started investing in NVIDIA, and a lot of the microelectronics um, companies. And so we did that over a 2 year time span. And with that, we realized because we was meeting on a regular frequency, we were starting to get to know each other a lot more. I call this term financially intimate because we was having a lot more financial conversations, and we realized that we were all kind of having different issues with finances, and we was like, man, when we started to see the passive success in the stock market, it's like, no, our parents didn't teach us this, right? This is not like public knowledge. And once people start to find out about the investment, it's like, oh, you should like replicate it, right? And kind of tell people to do the same thing. I think that's okay. But for us, we wanted something a little bit more tangible so people can see and feel. And so we started brainstorming ideas about a business, right? Let's take this energy, the fact that we got this capital raised up from investing in the stock market to now let's use that startup capital to start a business. And we was again on a virtual call. It was an early one, and we was drinking coffee, and the idea came up. What about coffee? And it was a joke initially, but we was like, wait, let's just treat it like we've been doing in terms of investing in the stock market. Let's just look at the industry. The first thing that caught our attention is that it's $1 billion industry, like multi-billion dollar. Easy to see that, right? The second thing that was kind of eye-opening was the fact that we found out the birthplace of coffee is in Ethiopia. And that really struck a chord to us because when you think of coffee, you don't really think of us, right? And with that, we just started going down a rabbit hole, right? Learning more about how coffee is grown, how it goes from that seed to your cup. And it was extremely fascinating. And with that, then the next thing was like, okay, what do we call ourselves? We don't know anything about the coffee industry. It sounds cool, but we just decided on the name, the Black Coffee Company. We thought it represented us, right? It wasn't taken. It was straightforward. And in addition to just the fact that we're Black co-founders, but it's also best to have your coffee black, right, in its natural state without the additives. And so we was like, well, I think we can run with this. And so we created the website, launched in February of 2018, right in line when Black Panther came out. So it was like, it was perfect timing.
Yeah.
And at the time, we only had one product on the website. It wasn't even coffee. It was actually our woke mug right here. This was just kind of get the proof of concept, right? Just to see if people would sort of like buy into what we're trying to sell. And so we started selling these woke mugs for the first 3 months. And then after 3 months or so, we started to understand the actual, the coffee industry, did a partnership with a local roaster in Dayton, Ohio, and started selling coffee. So I'll stop there. That was a lot. I'll let you ask question.
I love it. And someone said, I love that mug. What did they say? My favorite coffee mug. Yes.
Yes. Hey,
So,
Michelle.
so there are a few things that I want to highlight because first of all, you kind of dispelled a number of myths around just the Black community, right? So, if you follow any of the podcasts and things that I've done, I'm all about keeping it real. So, let's keep it real. The fact that you have Black men that came together, right, and decided, okay, we're going to actually just start investing and we're going to create these funds for ourselves. How common is that really?
So I think it's been it used to be practiced a lot more when we didn't have access to capital because that was the only way we could kind of pull ourselves up. We kind of lost it a little bit, once the 80s and 90s, families started breaking up due to the rapid drugs
Yeah.
usage, and so with that, we didn't necessarily think it was. We thought it was an anomaly just because we didn't see it practice so publicly, right? Looking back at it, my parents did it. My dad is from the Caribbean, Belize, and they used to have something called the syndicate. It's very similar where they would just like give $20 a month. It'll be like a large pool, and then week one we get the payout, and then it just kind of just rotate, right? And I remember my dad like having us in the syndicate, and we would get our little paycheck at the end, right, or whatever week it was, right? And
Yeah.
so now that I think about it, so those small little examples of working together, right? Because this particular family may get week one because they need the money now, right? And whereas they may not need it week five, as an example. Another example is that back in the day, you just had to go wherever your parents went, right? So my parents, they actually physically went to the bank, right? And cash checks and things of that nature. So I used to always go with my mom. She's always take us to the bank, and she set up bank accounts for us really, really early. And at the time, interest rates were a lot higher. And so I was super excited. I mean, it was like $5 in there, but then every month it'd be a little bit more, like, right? An
Yeah.
extra 20 cents or whatever, right? And I was just so excited that I saw that growth. And I was like, this is interesting that the money is growing, right? It was in my mind, it was like, put your money here and it will grow. And so this was those little small things that I think helped me realize the power of investing. Um, and then you fast forward to when I first started my career in the DoD, and they have something with the 401k, and um, you start to contribute, and you start to see that number go up like really, really fast if you're able to contribute. And it's like, man, this is kind of interesting that this money is growing without necessarily putting in any work. It's just because I automated it, and I actually was, disciplined enough to actually set it aside, which is something I think people truly have a challenge with, because one, they may not trust the system. Yeah, it is risk, and there's some volatility in that as well. But I think that is one of the true ways to actually for us to have this generational wealth.
And I love that how you responded to that question, because I think it is important to recognize that that is our history, right? So like
Hmm.
you said, if we're looking at maybe like the late 80s, the 90s, right? And of course, now there's just like a lot of different things because of social media. We may not realize that that is our history, that back, generations back, that was the culture to come together and build, right? And to build wealth among a community. And I love what you said about 401k, because those of us that are kind of stuck in the corporate grind, we don't stop and think about that, right? Like we're trusting corporate dollars and our corporate job to look out for us. But if we adopt that same mentality, we can build that wealth for ourselves. I love that.
Yeah.
And if you have questions, I know at least one person on there was like, "Oh, I can't wait for this conversation." So definitely feel free to drop any comments or questions in the chat. So again, so you put this together, you all put this together, and you started investing, and then you started building this for yourselves, right? And you said, we're going to create this business. So what were some of the challenges that you experienced along the way?
Yeah, initially it was just trying to understand each other's role in the company, right? Initially we was pretty just flat. Like, we didn't really have titles. We were just kind of just working, right? Um, co-founder Jamie Butler, he's very interested in like social media, so I'll do that, right? I'm really interested in finance, so I was like, I'll manage the books, the little books that there were back then, right? It wasn't much, right? And then Gino, he was very good with customer service, and as well as Christopher Bowden. And then Brandon, he has an IT, well, not IT, but he has a technical engineering background, so he would help provide putting those systems in place because he works for Microsoft, so he understood the whole like make it a system, and so he would
Mhm.
help us put things into a system. Um, and so with that, it was at first the main challenge was again not having clear roles, right? Because we didn't know how this was going to shake out, and so we were just kind of feeling it. And then over time, we evolved. It was like if we truly want to take this into the next level, we need to have clear roles with each other so that we can hold each other accountable. Because initially, it was just like whoever get to it could get to it, right? And it was no accountability because it wasn't clearly stated like, okay, Leonard, you need to ship out these orders, right? This is on you, right? So that was initially some of the challenges. And with that, with the fact that it is five of us, I call it our secret weapon because we can divide and conquer. But at the same time, it still can create some sort of if everybody's not pulling their equal weight, right, um, it can create tension, right? And with that, you have to still be patient, allow grace, and kind of realize the bigger picture, right? Um, some people just work a lot harder and faster than others, right? And you have to realize what that is, and then just try to find their strength and like have them work on those different things. But that was kind of the main challenge, was just having those clear roles initially. It was tough.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you said that. And that could be a whole another topic of conversation about building teams and building support. But I mean,
Mhm.
you talked about the challenge, and I'm guessing just communicating. Like, what other tips just around that piece would you say? If you're struggling to build your team and like you said, assign the roles. Just what's some advice that you can give on that, on how to do
Yeah.
it how to do it effectively?
Yep. So I call it like building trust. I think because we had 2 years plus experience investing with each other, actually putting money together, it kind of helped build that trust, accelerate that trust amongst each other. Whereas when it's just friends and there's not much skin in the game, right? I may have more money in here than you, right? So you may care more, right? The fact that we actually pulled money together and made us all have like equal like stake into it. And I think that's one of the important aspects of ownership. Um, I know a lot of the smaller business have the solopreneurs concept of 100%, but with a partnership, it allows somebody else to have that accountability to help grow, because it is really challenging to grow any business as a single person, right? It's all about building that team and that trust. And it takes time, right? It's not something that you could just hire somebody off the street, no matter how good they say they may be, until you're working with them day to day over time, and you start to build that trust and
Yeah.
that flow with each other.
Yeah. Now, I recall from a previous interview conversation that we did. So when you all decided to actually open up a physical location, there was someone that actually kind of helped support you all in that in Atlanta, correct? Can you talk a little bit about just how that piece, because I want to tie in together how, again, the community support and how important that is. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I could definitely kind of share a little bit, catch up on the story of 2018. So 2018, we launched the brand and we did our first pop up of June of 2018, and that was like that was it. Like we got the positive response that we needed to say that we're on the right track. And from there, we was like, we should have this strategy for the next year or so to be like increase our brand. And so we would do pop-ups. And we kind of labeled ourselves the pop-up kings. We would just pop up and provide coffee, go to community workouts, not necessarily selling it, but just kind of letting them know this is our brand and this is coffee, and go from there. Um, 2020, I remember at the end of 2019, like 2020 is that magical year, right? We got all of these big plans. We're like, okay, we're going to hit this festival, South by Southwest, right? We want to do it big, right? And then COVID came, and it just really just like we had to pause at that moment, because we was going into that year trying to pop up, try to hit as many farmers markets and vendor fairs as possible. And so we had to pause because of the pandemic. But luckily, because we started in 2018 as an e-commerce site, we was already online. And so when the pandemic hit, people started to transition to purchasing coffee online, and our sales, definitely increased. And that just happened to be because we was already positioned online. We already figured out the logistics of actually mailing and shipping coffee across the country. And so we definitely saw a huge increase sales from that. And then 2020, we was doing a pop up in Atlanta, and we it was on actually June 2020. Killer Mike had his swag shop. He hosted a pop up, and one of the co-founders he went to the pop up initially hesitant to do it just because that's like right in the middle of the pandemic, but he did it. We got to get a cool photo with Killer Mike, and we didn't think anything of it. And fast forward a couple of weeks, maybe mid July, a developer in Atlanta reached out to us via direct message on Instagram. And initially we like ignored it because we thought it was spam. Like, who is this guy asking us to create a coffee shop in Atlanta? Like, we don't have any financials or any sort of traction in terms of running a coffee shop. So we ignored it. And then a few days later, Killer Mike jumped into the and was like, hey, my friend is a developer. the community wants a coffee shop, I think your brand would be perfect to open a coffee shop there. And so we went and visited the site. It was literally just, four walls, holes in the ground, nothing there. And we looked at each other. It was like, this is an opportunity of a lifetime. And so one of the co-founders moved from Los Angeles to Atlanta to help, open up the shop. And with that, I mean, we had a significant amount of money from the online sales, but we knew that wasn't going to be sustainable, right? Things would eventually sort of ebb and flow. And so we used a little bit of the capital from our investment and from the online sales to kind of kickstart the initial build out of the coffee shop. But it was nowhere near the amount that's needed. And so with that, that forced us to pivot. So we started writing grants, and we. So this is when Beyonce had her first Bay Good of a nonprofit, grant for Black businesses, giving out $10,000. And the thing was, you had to create a video, right? And and so we put together this video. We're all geographically separated, so we kind of pieced it together and we submitted it. And lo and behold, we actually won the grant, and we was like, "Oh, this is crazy, right?" and
Wow.
yeah, and at the time, we didn't have, anything in the actual build out, right? It was just a vision. We kind of highlighted what we've done in the past and what we would like to do in Atlanta in terms of building the coffee shop. So we say, Beyonce was an early investor. So super shout out to her and the Bay Good team. Um,
That's amazing. That is
yep.
amazing. And I see some in the comments are talking about how you were positioned, right? You were positioned, and even you
Hmm.
already had the online presence. And even though, like everyone's saying, COVID was just a horrible time, right? And so
Hmm.
much badness came from that. But it definitely is refreshing when we hear stories like this, like the
Hmm.
pivot from, during that time, and look at the success that came out of
Yep.
that.
Hmm.
That is
Hmm.
amazing, amazing. And something there's so our good friend Stacy Tucker, I'm sure you guys know her. She comes to a lot of our events and everything.
Hmm.
I always love that she says the quote, something to the effect of stay ready so you don't have to get ready. Right. And she
Hmm.
probably didn't initiate the quote, but she says it all the time. And it sounds like really that's what you're talking about. Like not just some people might look at that and say, like, they want to be in the right place at the right time, but you all did that in a way of having money on hand, right? You were working hard. You went to the pop-up events, you checked your Instagram DM, right? So
Hmm.
that talk about just again, how important is that to make sure you are being ready for these opportunities?
Yeah, that is extremely important, especially what we realized in 2024. Like 2024 has been a whirlwind for us and the team. And a lot of it has to do with just, I call it leaning in, right? When the call comes, not don't talk yourself out of it, right? There's that quote, you miss every single shot that you don't take. And so for us, like we take a lot of shots, right? And I think it's because it's a team, honestly. Like we have different strengths. I'll talk about the CEO, Jamin Butler. He's a lot more risk. He takes on a lot more risk. He'll jump, don't even have a clue of how we're gonna actually do it. He's like, yes, we'll do it. And I'm the opposite. I'm like, okay, let me think this through. Like, how are we gonna do this? Right? We
Yeah.
need to like have these things in place. And so we sort of balance each other out. We called it, so he jumps out the plane without a parachute, and I'm right behind him with the parachute, right, to catch him. And so um, that's how it's kind of been going, right? With the coffee shop, yeah, that's not an easy thing to decide to do, right? Given that we wasn't, it was only one co-founder there in Atlanta at the time, and the fact that one was moving there, it was a lot of questions like how are we going to raise this capital. Like, yeah, we could write grants, but I mean that's not sustainable. So that forced us to pivot with actually reaching out to our family and friends. And at that moment we realized, before I mentioned, when people found out about this, because I was like, you should replicate this, right? Tell people to do this, give it their friends and invest, yada yada yada. But with the coffee shop, I I I realized this could be that way to bring in the community to invest, right, together. It's something tangible. It's a product that's easily to describe. It's not overly complicated, right? It's coffee, right? You don't really have to say it's this app that's going to do this and be this efficient. So have AI and people just kind of lost. It's like, oh, we just selling coffee, right? It's $1 billion industry and we want to, generate funds with this. And so with that, we open up a family and friends investing. A lot of the ideas came from learning the different stories about the tech startups, right? Like the Ubers and the Facebooks at the time. And I realized they had investors, right? They had access to venture capitalists. They would just give them $1 million check or whatever, like go build, right? Without any, just a PowerPoint. We couldn't really do that, right? We're not gonna get $1,000 check, we're not or $1 million check because we just don't have people on our network with that sort of discretionary funds. But we said we could accept smaller donations and build towards it over time. Yes, we may not raise $100,000 the first round, but we could probably raise 500. We could raise 1,000. We could raise 10,000. Right? Let's just put it out there. And with that, we put together a pitch deck. I didn't know much about it. We just Google it, right, find a little template, and started pitching to our family and friends, people we went to college with. I mean, that was one of the beauties that we went to college with, HBCU, Xavier University, which is #1 school, medical school. So like, oh, we know a lot of doctors that have money. Let's reach out to them, right? And it actually worked. Um, and we put together a pitch, reached out to our family and people we graduated with, and we got a lot of no's initially, but we got our first yes. It was my cousin Renita a lot, and she gave us $1,000, and then we looked at each other like we can't turn back now. We got to just keep moving forward, and we just continued to like pitch. And at the end of round one, we ended up raising a little over $10,000, and so we just continued to build.
Wow. So I'm gonna pause to see, does anyone have any questions? Anyone want to come on and ask any questions? Unmute yourself. Someone said very inspiring. Yes.
Hi, good evening. I have a question.
Good evening.
Hello.
So regarding the pitch to your family and asking them to invest, how was that structured? Like, was there an ROI for those early investors?
Yes, that's very important, right? It's called like we didn't want it to view it as a donation. You're This is a true investment where you will have a return on interest. And for us, what we felt was most comfortable within our network was a loan type structure, right? A lot of the tech startups offer equity, safe notes, but that's a little complicated to explain, right? The safe note is like, simple agreement for future equity, right? So you just basically provide a dollar amount, right? And then when the company gets to a point where they actually have a true valuation, then that's when that would turn to equity, right? But that's no guarantee, right? I mean, it works in favor for the investor because there's no obligation to return the money. It's like simple agreement for future equity. If there's no future equity, you lost, right? It's just an investment. And so for us, we structured it similar to like a car loan. So we offered 5% return on interest, and it was basically a 2-year loan, which we realized that was too soon. But essentially, you would earn 5% compounded over 24 months, and we would repay the investor after 1 year and break that up over 12 months. So that was kind of the way we offered it, and it was just a 5% interest. Real simple math. Um, I did the form just kind of highlighting these will be your 12 payments starting a year from today, right? Every month will send you this amount of money. Right? So it was real simple to explain.
Hmm. We had one in the chat. Let's see. How do you go from angel investors to crowdfunding?
Yeah, so initially, so round 1 through 5 was structured like a car loan as an example, or yeah, I'll just use car loan as an example. And so the first round, like I said, we return the money after 1 year, which is way too fast, right? Because you just don't have time for that capital to work, right? And so for the next round, we started to stretch it out. Again, it was very strategic. You can't just say, here's a loan for 10 years, right? I'm gonna pay you back in 10 years. Who knows if we gonna be around, right? So you got to slowly build that trust. And so for the next round, we offered it after 3 years, right? And then by round five, we offered it after five. But this was because we was able to show that we returned all of the round one investments, right? Proof of concept had testimonies, building that trust. And they could see the coffee shop growing. They could see that we're using the money to purchase the fancy espresso machine, to get the countertops, to get these different products, to hire, right? And so we just slowly walked our network to uh, investing, right? Because we wanted to be as a teaching moment. We kind of use our company as an exemplar, right? How can you work together, right? And so we would, publish on our blog, here's our term agreement, right? This is what we're doing. If you want to replicate this, it's right here. You just change the numbers, decide whatever percent you want to offer, right? It's a very simple agreement. And with the crowdfunding, right? So we did the first 5 rounds. We raised a little over 125,000, right, combined, right? So that's over 3 years, right, to get to that dollar amount. And so with crowdfunding, we was like, well, let's take it up another notch, right? Let's make sure we have some security, not for just ourselves, but for our investors as well. And so we wanted to actually go to crowdfunding site. And with that, there's tons of different crowdfunding platforms. There's like WeFunder, Start Engine, and we just happened to go to InvestFest and we met the co-founder of Seat at the Table. It's a Black-owned crowdfunding platform. And he saw our sign saying, are you looking to invest, right? And he was like, oh, you guys think about raising money? It's like, yeah, I gave him a little pitch, trying to raise 200,000, yada, yada, yada. He's like, come on my platform. And I was like, how would I go on your platform? And then he's like, it's Black owned. We have these people back in the project, like Baron Davis, who was an NBA basketball player. And I was like, you know what? Let's actually do that, right? Let's partner, right? And with that, we did our due diligence in terms of understanding the paperwork and the process of actually putting your crowdfunding campaign on a crowdfunding platform. It's tedious. You are filing with the SEC, right? And it's really for I would say a lot of early companies. It's hard to fathom trying to put that much time into the paperwork. Of course, it's not as clear and straightforward on how to actually do these things, right? So sometimes you're kind of guessing. It takes a lot of persistent, being really consistent, right? Filing it and then they reject it. And like, oh, okay, what are they? Why, right? And so for us, we finally got it. So initially, the investment was in August of 2023. I thought it was going to be up and running by September. I thought it was easy. But then it was a lengthy process. I see Miss Patricia on here. She helped me out. Shout out to her. She gave me some advice and linked me up with a lawyer to help us file our paperwork properly. But it was really good because it forces you to dot all your I's and cross all your T's, right? You have to know your numbers really, really well, and you have to publish that to a public place where anybody can access your numbers. And so it was actually very rewarding. It took a lot of effort, but with that crowdfunding campaign, we raised over $125,000 alone in that round. So there's definitely power with using the crowdfunding platform, even though there's a lot of paperwork initially.
Wow. And I think there was, let's see, Patricia asked, did you increase the ROI interest rate with the longer time frames?
Yeah, so this is a really, really good question. So for round 6, again, you're always learning as a business owner. And so initially those first 5 rounds were structured as loan because that's all I knew. And then as I've learned and started to see other crowd campaigns, I saw something called revenue share loan. Like, what is that? Like, what is that? And then so I did my research and I was like, oh, this is a win-win. So the way the revenue share loan works is that you allocate X amount, you can say this 10%, that's what we did, of your revenue, and you share it with your investors every quarter, right? So the return on investment for us was 1.25x, so 25%. So if you put in 1,000, you'll get back $1,250, right? But with the revenue sharing, it doesn't put a lot of pressure on the business to meet those very firm numbers every single month, no matter if you did good, there was a COVID, or there was like a rainy season, we had a flood, like you still are obligated to meet that number to return to the investor. With revenue share, again, it just depends on your revenue for that quarter. So if you do really well, the investor gets a lot more money. And then in the cases where your revenue is not as high, you're returning a little bit less, but you're still able to make those payments. But it gives you, I call it a win-win, right? Because it doesn't put that additional pressure on the business, because you know upfront how much you're going to allocate to actually return to your investors.
Wow, that is so amazing. I imagine with the revenue sharing, um, yes, Patricia said, I'm gonna need you to write a whole book on this. This is golden. Yeah, I know I'm sitting there like, I can't wait to watch the replay on this because I'm like, this is amazing. So I imagine with the revenue sharing, do you have to show kind of like how you're going to make this amount of money, right? Like I imagine on one hand, you have to be able to really sell like the dream. Is that, am I looking at that correctly?
Absolutely. So with any sort of crowdfunding or any sort of like investing, right, you got to sell it, right? Mark Zuckerberg was like, "Oh, I got the social media; it's gonna make tons, billions of dollars. Right? You got to sell it." And with that, with the coffee, we had to put together again a pitch deck and kind of show what our projections are and how we're going to do it. And so you have to like take the time to come with a sound plan, right? Things can change over time, but you need to clearly communicate what your plan is to um, convince an investor to invest in you, right? Because at the end of the day, they are investing in you. You could write a good plan, but it's up to you. Because I mean, things happen, and you always have to pivot. You just can't control everything. But is it you that's going to be able to pivot, be persistent when you have multiple days where you don't feel like it's going well, but you're still every day waking up trying to figure it out. But yeah.
Wow, that is just so amazing. And how do you just keep everyone focused on the mission, right? Like you said, it's five of you all, and then that's just kind of the immediate. I know you have also other people who are supporting your staff. So how do you, because I imagine, especially because you do have people investing, it's kind of almost like a no days off, right? Like you have to keep everybody focused on like it's not just us. Like if we lose, it's not just us losing. Like there's other people who have invested. So like how do you keep everybody just focused on the same path?
Yeah, so two things, like communication to your investors as well, right? Let them know that you're struggling, where they can help. I actually lean on them for help, right?
Mhm.
Oftentimes they have expertise in a particular subject domain area. They may be into marketing. You can ask them for advice. It's not just necessarily investing in their dollars, right? We could tap into their expertise and their network, right? They may know some people that got money, right? So they may convince them to invest along with them, right? And then also with the team, again, building a team is challenging. Like at the coffee shop, we have about 13 part-time employees. And again, that's a whole nother beast, right? It's not in terms of scheduling and making sure that they're trained. And it's a lot of different dynamics in terms of making sure the actual team that's running the day-to-day operations of the coffee shop. But again, I think yeah, Jamin, he does yeah, I just want to take a few moments just to kind of talk about like his leadership. I've learned a lot just watching how he communicates to the team because he's there day to day, but I'm on all the communication. And like you said, you got to keep them motivated. And so for us, we know reviews are like everything, right? Every single thing. And so we pride ourselves on customer service, even if we take a loss, right? We want to make sure the customer has the best experience because sometimes, yeah, it's unfair. When you're a black-owned business, they do tend to like that comment hurts so much. I try to support a black-owned business, but yada 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 yada, right?
Yeah.
At those reviews always hurt the most, right?
Yeah.
Um, but what Jamin does is that he shares the results, he shares the reviews, right, in our group chat. Like, so when we get a 5-star, so they're seeing the feedback. So they see what coffee means to them. It's not just serving a coffee. People, it's a ritual, it's a thing, right? And so they understand like the vision behind it, and they see how much we pour into them, right? We pay them really well. We make sure that they get their tips on time. We make sure that they get their paycheck on time. We invest a lot into them, right? In addition to like just the actual like business, and we always try to have as many conversations about investing with them, right? Because we have an investing background. We try to expose them to these different opportunities. So we had, high school students working for us. They just recently graduated high school. So shout out to them. And then we have a number of college students from Morehouse, Clark, Atlanta, Spelman, actually work at the coffee shop. So these are some of the things that we didn't initially realize the impact that we have, and so being able to empower them has been just truly rewarding, and to serve the community in large. Because initially I was thinking, hey, just a cup of coffee, that's that. But then we actually listened to the community. We're located in a food desert, so we had to start serving healthy food options, right? Even though that stretched us, right? Because anytime you're cooking food, that's just I could get the coffee down process pretty straightforward, but like food has so many variabilities just to manage the cost. But we had to do it because we had to listen to our customers. Another case in point, initially we was gonna go all digital. I know we used to see a trend where a lot of the companies would just only take digital payments, but our community is underserved, and a lot of people don't have debit cards that come into our coffee shop. So even though I was a pro of just going all digital just for the safety of the employees, right? We had to be able to accept cash as well, just so we could truly serve the community.
Wow, that is amazing. Now, just to pivot a little bit, still on the same topic, but the expression, all money isn't good money. So when you're thinking about investments, right? And it sounds like you all are very targeted in trying to make those connections, but what advice would you give if people how do they determine if this is a good investment, right? Because I'll be honest, if you're trying to start your business and you're trying to grow it, you want any money that's coming. But would you agree that you should be selective and maybe not all money is good money? Talk about that.
Yeah, I definitely agree 100% with that. Like, all money is not good money. Essentially, when you start to accept money from people, it's like a marriage, right? Like, you just don't want to just get into a relationship, especially a financial relationship with anybody. And so for us, we definitely um, sort of know, check all of our investors, right? Let them know these are the terms. We want to build a relationship with them. And for us, communication is so important to them, like making sure we send out the quarterly reports to finances so that they can see there's ebbs and flows with the business, and the fact that we're transparent. Um, and so for us, yeah, you definitely don't want to take all money, right? Because um, yeah, it could be misalignment, right? And somebody may come with a big check, but they may be truly focused on the ROI, right?
Mhm.
Not focused on the community. So just making sure your investors are in line with your mission is the number one thing you
Yeah.
should always consider.
And I think, like you said, it's probably good. That's where it's good having the team because that way, someone can have that kind of mindset like, no, this is not going to be a good fit. Because, like I said, I know me.
Yep.
I'll be like,
Hmm.
write the check. So you need to write correct spelling. Let me.
Yep.
But like you said, it's good to have people who you're able to have those conversations and see like, is this truly a good fit? Not just about, wanting to get the money behind it.
Correct. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a good point. So now you talked about, starting in Atlanta, like with the actual physical space. And of course, you're in the DMV, so DC, Maryland, Virginia area. Talk about the difference that you've seen in just from a business standpoint, how things go in Atlanta versus DMV. Is there much difference? What's the support like?
Yeah. So Atlanta is special, right? There's nothing we can say or do about Atlanta. Is like the Black Mecca.
Yeah.
Growing up in Los Angeles, um, it was that's something I didn't see every day. Just the way Los Angeles is, the population and demographics. It wasn't something that I truly saw in terms of people truly supporting each other. So I say we was blessed that that was our first location.
Right.
The DMV, again, I'm not from this area, but it has been very supportive, right? Meeting people like you, meeting Patricia, very, very supportive in terms of like building our network and actually getting aligned to make sure we help each other along the way. Because we know it's very challenging as an entrepreneur. Oftentimes, a lot of us are working on 9 to 5 in addition to doing the job. So just being that support system has been truly helpful. I do think that was one of the best decisions in terms of joining your business crossing network, right? It initially, like I said, I was focused on Atlanta, right? Just because I didn't have a team here and I didn't have a brick and mortar. So a lot of my attention was there. But then over time, as I became more involved in the different things that you're offering, I started to grow the brand out here. And now that, we're doing these pop-ups all over the place, right? And it's starting to take off. And so, yeah, because we're gonna actually do Broccoli Fest, so we're super excited about that. That's a big one for the DMV team. And then with that, I've been able to start to build my team. It's actually, very um, family run. I have my brother-in-law, I have my sister-in-law, I have my wife, all help out, right? And that's something that I didn't initially think would be the case, right? But they've been super, super supportive and everything we've been doing, right? I can't pop up by myself, right? I need somebody there to help load and unload. And they've been really, really supportive. And I've been actually surprised of quote unquote how hungry they are. They're like, oh, when we going back in the streets? Like, so I know that we have something special going on because it's not me bothering them to come out and say, can you help me? No, they're asking me when is the next opportunity because they start to see that engagement that coffee brings, right? The brand, a signature drink, the light skin Keisha, they see that response. And so I think it's very addicting for us to actually work and have that energy, right? It's all about that energy. And you know, they pulled me to the side, and it hit my heart because it was like, thank you for the opportunity. And and the thing is that I didn't necessarily view it as that. I was just needing help, but the pop-ups are so fun because they get to quote unquote be themselves, right? Serve coffee, right? The pop-ups are in these nice sort of venues where the music is a nice vibe, and most people where they work, right? You get paid and it's a nice vibe. That's a win-win, right? And so for them, it's like that is what it's about. And they see where we could take it, right? They see the coffee shop and they see where we could take this to another level.
Wow. I need to hit some of these comments.
Uh-huh.
They had me cracking up. Y'all not gonna just talk about DMV like that. Let's see. Rose was like, Prince George's County has entered the building. Patricia said that
PG.
being in business in this area means also getting involved politically. So I do want to come back to that and hear your thoughts on that. Let me see. Part of pop-ups no one really speaks about is how close it brings your team together, which brings the community to you because they want to be part of the magic. Vibes in a company who appreciates you win. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
let's go back. Let's talk about that special specialty there that the DMV brings, which is like they said, the politics. And I know Patricia, we've talked even offline about just some of the things that you all have experienced. So Leonard, talk about that. Have you experienced that? Just the politics of the area, any challenges in that regard?
So I'm well aware that there's always politics, and this is like the politics mecca, right? In terms of just getting access to a lot of different things. And so, I mean, we personally haven't had much like political, like sort of like friction or challenges yet. But we are very aware, even in Atlanta, right? We understand how uh, access to capital works, right? It's all about who you know, um, and then it's about who you support as well, right? Especially when you have the engagement with the community. That's something that we've learned with Atlanta, right? It's not from outside looking in, it seems like nobody cares, right? It's just yeah, have happy business, but then you go to these meetings and you realize all these fightings, people are blocking motions to purchase different things, and for reasons we don't know why, right?
Yeah.
And so I definitely think that we'll face our challenges, especially as we start to get maybe into a brick and mortar, right? DMV cost of living is a lot higher, so just even moving in this area, just trying to pop up is just a lot more challenging. Whereas the cost of living in Atlanta is a little bit easier. So our long term goal or near term goal for the DMV is to open up a coffee roastery. So with that, I've been looking, trying to find a spot that's reasonably priced, which is kind of hard to do in Northern Virginia. But
Yeah.
um,
That's very cool though. So how would that work?
how would it work? Oh, so my initial plan is to start out just with a coffee roasting facility.
Okay.
So we'll be able to increase our capacity of coffee roasting, and that way we'll be able to target more retail distributions. And then from there, I would look into actually build out like a cafe, maybe next to it or somewhere
Mm.
close by. I initially don't want to, and I learned a lot from the coffee shop in Atlanta. It's very challenging having that forward facing sort of business with the customers day in and day out. And so I think the right step is for us to do the coffee roastery, get our, increase our revenue, and then look into the actual service of coffee. Not to say that we won't be able to serve coffee in the coffee roastery, but that won't be the main focus initially. But yeah, that's the plan. But there's definitely a demand, right? There's definitely.
Yes, let's see. We've got
Mhm,
let's see, access. Patricia said, can you open in Salt Box? I know at least two coffee businesses that operate from there.
yeah, so I've heard about it. That's like in the DC area, right? They have different vendors to actually pop up there. Yeah, so that's something that I've heard of it. Haven't done like an in-depth research on it, but yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you for the recommendation.
Yeah, yeah. And I will let's see, wait, before I say my piece. Yeah, good idea. Scaling and distribution is everything. Great product, and more people need to experience it. Yes, 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 yes.
Hmm.
And that was my other question. We joked about the DMV, but as you mentioned, so Atlanta is, I mean, your whole brand is Black coffee, right? The Black
Hmm.
Coffee Company. You all are Black individuals, so it definitely kind of is an easier sell, right? But how do you kind of work around that here in the DMV? Because obviously it's extremely diverse depending on where you go, right? So are you just like, no, we are Black, 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 or have you had to pivot? Like, talk about just that. How do you work that in this area?
Yeah, so for us, I mean, we have this saying, coffee gets a seat at every table, right? What we realize is that I don't think people care what the name is. People fall in love with the story and the actual quality of the bean, and that's it. That's just based on our experience. Even doing pop-ups in DC, it's been super welcoming, right? They consume a lot of coffee there, right, all throughout the day, and people just love to um, consume our products because we serve specialty coffee. And what that means is that, our coffee is single origin. So that means it comes from a particular farm. It's not mixed in. And we source high quality beans. And so the coffee has a unique flavor profile. And most of the people that are consumers of our coffee and brand truly appreciate that, right? The big box brands often provide lower grade coffee where you have to add the additives for it to be consumable. For us, you can really drink a lot of our coffee black. I've heard several people say, "Is this truly coffee? It kind of tastes like tea," right? Because it is just a unique product. And that's one of the great things about coffee itself. It takes on the flavor profiles of the region that it's grown in. So a lot of the coffees in Africa have more of a fruit floral sort of undertone, whereas the ones in South America have more the chocolate base undertone, nut base. And so people can experience those different dynamics as they enjoy their coffee. And so for us, that's been part of our selling point. We always encourage people to drink their coffee black. So when we do pop-ups, we often give samples. Just try it black without adding any sugar. Just try it. You
Yeah.
know you can't break that habit of 2 creams and sugar, whatever your thing is, right? But at least try it, right? And tell us what your thoughts are, right? And so that's been sort of the key. We found like coffee, even the name. I mean, it's funny because I when I when I when I when I'm like on the plane and I hear people say, I like to have just a black coffee. I'm like, oh, they want me, right? Right. But it's a thing, right? It's not like something where it's not a thing, right?
Yeah.
Because early on during the George Floyd and the pandemic, we got a lot of social media sort of, I won't say bullying, but people, oh, what is black coffee? Why is no such thing as white coffee? I was like, well,
Um,
that's not a thing, right? And
right,
so
right.
people were kind of attacking us just because of the name Black Coffee, saying it was racist, so yada yada yada. But it's like
Mm.
black coffee is a thing. It's not.
I
We're not
love
trying to
that.
segregate.
Yeah, you know what though? I love that because I feel like the takeaway is no matter what your brand, find the common ground, right? Because
Hmm.
even like you said, you all can just show up authentically you, but you're not pushing an agenda, right? You're not highlighting like, oh, we're a bunch of black folks that, like you. So I think that's a big takeaway. Like no matter what your business is, if you are able to find that thing that can kind of transcend over, different populations, then you'll be successful. I know like
Hmm.
Patricia's on here, like candles, right? Like,
Yep.
you
Hmm.
can add all kind of different designs and scents and all that, but at the end of the day, it's candles. And that's something that isn't biased to just like this ethnic group or this population. So I love that as just a business tip.
Hmm. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah. Wow, good stuff. And let's see, that's what I love about your coffee being straight, no additives. I love that. I love that. So, as we kind of start wrapping up, what are just some other tips that you would say? Well, actually, before I even get to that, one of the things that when we talked about having this conversation, I wanted to make sure we do talk about the importance of the Black dollar. And again, as I mentioned, I'm sure those that are watching this will be watching this after the fact, but this is during a time, Juneteenth, where we're talking about Black freedom. So, how does Black wealth connect with freedom?
It's everything. Literally fighting for your time. Sometimes it's a little harder to like realize that, but I think as you become older and wiser, you realize the value of your time. And so every single day, you're fighting for that freedom. And when you realize the reason why you're working the 9 to 5, primarily, sometimes it may be passion, you may be interested, but a lot of it is to support your lifestyle, right? But as you get older, you realize, you may not want to actually, um, you may not want to do that, right? You may want to spend your time elsewhere with your kids, with your loved ones, right? Um, and so with that, you know, that's the importance of the financial freedom, right? And so with us, we always try to encourage people to like start early and often, right? In terms of investing and saving, start early. Um, that's something I've done with my younger brother-in-law and sister-in-law. So I was like, I'll pay you guys, but under one condition: you have to open a brokerage account. You got to open an investment account, right? And so I pay them through their brokerage account, right? And so that they can start investing. And so it's these little things that we try to do, right, to help some of our, younger generation about saving, right?
Yeah.
And for us, we realize so we just did Black Coffee Fest. And one thing we realized, the production is probably close anywhere between 75K to 100K to all the costs, right? Um, Super expensive, our biggest one yet. Um, but when we looked at it, right, almost I would probably say 90% of the things that we used, the companies that we used were Black owned. And this is where the dollar is circulating, right? Our production team, all Black, super young, professional, killing it. All of the vendors, Black owned. dollars circulating, right? All of the different artwork, printing material that we did for the actual conference, Black owned, right? And so, yes, it may cost a little bit more, but you have to think the long term, right? Because what we're truly building is a strong community. And we wasn't able to get to 3 years of doing Black Coffee Fest if we wasn't focused on building community. And that's at the heart of what we've tried to do and try to instill with coffee, right? Coffee is that vehicle, right? As soon as you come to a coffee shop, it says community empowerment, financial freedom, and entrepreneurship. So we kind of use that as the model, right? And so when you're in that space, it's crazy because like I'm not there day to day, but I heard so many stories when I was there this weekend. It's like, yeah, we wrote a book about you, right? You inspired us to write a book. Like, whoa, who would have thought, right? Like, who would have thought? And I use the spaces for the creative energy. Our number one um, customer is entrepreneurs. They use it as a co-working space because we have the free Wi-Fi. And so just being able to create a platform for so many people has been truly rewarding for us. Again, initially, I was just thinking sell coffee, right? You look at the Starbucks model, get them in and out, yada, yada, yada. But you realize the true value is that space, right? For people to grow, to connect. So many people have connected just because they've met each other at the coffee shop, right? Or they met each other at Black Coffee Fest. So for us, we consider ourselves a platform, and our mission is to elevate and empower entrepreneurs.
Wow. That is amazing, beautiful. Now, I know earlier Patricia mentioned about a book, but do you all have any plans of just really having like a structured, formatted, educational, like are you teaching this stuff? Like this conversation was great, but I know I'm like, I've got questions, like I need to take notes. Like are there any plans for that?
Yeah, so we have some things on our blog. So you go to our website and you can see some of the things that we've documented over the years. Again, our initial plan was to actually document everything and put it on public forum. But again, with time, we haven't been able to write as much. But I did write a blog about like crowdfunding because not necessarily some things that I found challenging, right? It was interesting with round 1 through 5. It was a lot easier for people to send them a check, right? Yeah, send them a PowerPoint, they send a check. It was a real easy transaction, right? But when we did the crowdfunding platform, we was wondering why people wasn't able to like um, submit their payment, right? And we learned these little sort of things going back to like history, right? With the crowdfunding, you have to submit your social security number and it's filed with the SEC. And that point right there, everybody stopped right there. And because it's that lack of trust.
Yeah.
So talking to people, it was interesting. I was like, it's like, I don't know if I want to give my social. Why do you need my social? It's not us, right? It's just part of the filings, right? They need to know that you're a real person submitting an investment, right? Because I mean, think about it, right? You can have a drug lord or whoever, right? So, like laundering money to companies, right? So they need to be able to track this money. And so, as you said, as you see, right? Everybody gets scared.
I
And
get
so,
it.
so initially it was just eye opening as I was talking to people. I was like, I was following up. I was like, yeah, you said you was interested in investing. I'm like, I saw that thing that asked for my social. I'm not sure where it's going. And then so with that, I kind of put together a blog just to kind of walk them through the whole process, try to dispel, demystify like why they need this, right? It's for your protection, right? And our protection as well.
Yeah.
And so you just got to explain these different things. But that's just all part of learning, right? This is all part
Yeah.
of learning. And like we hope that this could be a learning platform for people if they want to start to invest in other companies that's on like the crowdfunding platform. They won't be as cautious or hesitant because they had kind of done it before, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I agree with Patricia. When you guys put that together, that class, course, whatever it is y'all do, we signing up because it's important, and like you said, you all have kind of learned some things that work, some things that don't work. But I mean, it's great just even just understanding the investment. Like getting
Mm-hmm.
the investments, but like you said, maybe you want to invest in, Black owned companies or just in different things. I've seen there's another organization that has done some investment, trying to get people to invest in them. And I just had a conversation with him, and it was like, he talked about laundromats and different things that people are investing in, and I'm like, what? Like, it just opened my mind. So we will be on the
Yeah,
lookout.
yeah. So interesting point, right? I went like I went to the cleaners right before I went to investment, and I picked up my clothes, and that just small talk, right? Like, oh, uh, cleaners usually have a historic, they've been there, right? And so I just asked the question, how long you guys been in business, right? And I'm thinking like years, like 30 years, because I mean, you always go to cleaners. And she's like, 1 year. I was like, 1 year? What? That's yeah. But what I'm realizing, a lot of times, a lot of our Asian American friends are owners of these sort of businesses. And what I realized at that point is maybe I don't know who the owner was before, but maybe they actually sold it to somebody, to their family and friends. And I think that aspect alone, it resonated with me, right? Because I like, what is the long term plan with the coffee shop, right? Is it sustainable long term? Coffee shops always have a presence in the community, and so for us, in terms of generational wealth, that is something that we could start targeting, right? We don't always have to necessarily target the next tech company or whatever. It could be something as small as the laundromat, but let's just figure out how to transfer that wealth to the next generation, right? Sell it, right? It's okay to sell, right? Let's sell it to our people, right? So that we can continue to recycle that money into the community. But it's funny how like that question alone just really resonates because I mean, the building has been there. I've seen this cleaners there for years, but the fact that like you only been open for a year made me realize that you may have just bought it from another one of your Asian American friends and
Mhm.
keeping that wealth inside of that community. And
Yeah.
so that's something that we have to do as well. We have to be super strategic. We have to be intentional in doing that, right?
Mhm.
So that was just one of those aha moments as I was leading up to this conversation. Like, that's how they do it. Like, you don't, you heard the stories, but like when you see it, like, oh, it really is happening like that,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah. And we just need more conversations around this. Let's see. Dr. Fuller said, what will coffee pods be coming in the future?
so yeah, we have our K cups available on our website and the coffee shop. Shout out to Dr. Fuller. He's a financial literacy guru. He was at Black Coffee Fest. His daughter Layla, dynamic, 11 years old, killed the stage. We had a young entrepreneurs panel. But yeah, his family is amazing. Again, I met them at Black Coffee Invest Fest last year. So again, these are just some of the things, the power of going to these different conferences, staying in conversation, and, and staying connected together. So,
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Fuller, for joining the conversation. Awesome. Let's see. Where else? I saw something else. Also, as Black men moving mountains, our kids need to see more of this. Yes. Listening to a podcast that focused on buying and selling business within the community. And then can you speak to this year and the economy? Has it impacted your business? Have y'all had to pivot at all? Oh, that's a great question.
yeah, that's a really good question. So 2024 has been a whirlwind, as I mentioned earlier. So things kind of kicked off because we was doing a crowdfunding campaign, and the Atlanta Business Chronicle reached out to us um, about the campaign, right? Um, and I took the call just thinking he was just asking how the revenue share worked. I didn't think nothing of it. And then he was heard the story. He's like, oh, I could write a story on this, right? And so he ended up writing a cover story right front and center. And that kind of is interesting because as we was talking, he said, "Have you met John Hope Bryan?" I was like, "I haven't personally met him. The team has met him because we did the Black Effect podcast and he came by our booth." And that was that. I was like, "Well, if you know him, put in a good word for us, right?"
Right.
That was it. And then the article comes out and they have a quote from him. I think initially because I told him about Killer Mike, so I was reaching out to Killer Mike trying to get a quote for the article, but he ended up finding John Hope Bryan, and he talked about the story about meeting us and loving the coffee. And then from there, they found out about our crowdfunding campaign and invested $25,000 into our to that crowdfunding campaign. And then
Wow.
from there, um, at the keynote, he mentioned this was the first time he's actually like invested dollars into a particular company
Wow.
before, Operation Hope and the 1 Million Black Business organization. They provide resources, right? Coaching, things of that nature. But this was the first time that they actually invested dollars. So it was something that he saw in us that he said he wants to invest dollars. And they said only under one stipulation, like, can we do some PR around it? I was like, oh, of course you can do as much PR you want around this. So like, I was like, easy,
Wow.
right? And so with that partnership, you know, um, Moonshot Black Coffee Fest is coming up. I reached out to their team. I was like, would John Hope R&B interested in giving a keynote? It was like, yes. I'm like, oh, there it is, right? And so that's how that story kind of came about. But uh, having that partnership has truly elevated us, um, and actually able to raise over $125,000 has helped us go into a new service. Initially, we was primarily focused on the coffee shop, and so what we started to realize is that we was getting a lot of inquiries about catering, right? Doing events for like private companies or whatnot, but we didn't have the mobile coffee machine, and so with that, we was able to purchase a coffee cart. Um, Randomly, well, not randomly, Delta Airlines reached out to us, right? And they was like, can you do our leadership conference? It was like, yes, this is Jamin again. Yes, right? And it's only 2 weeks. And then I was like, wait, hold on. How many people are you expecting? It was like, well, 3,000 each day. And so we said yes, and we were scrambling to get the cart made, get the equipment, and we was able to execute at a very, very high level. Again, I think just answering the call, that was in January, right? Um, and from then we've been able to just use that as a stepping stone to continue to build. And now I have a coffee cart out here as well. So we've been able to hit different pop-ups and just sort of leaning in. We have tons of opportunities. Um, in the works with working some of the HBCUs. We'll be making that announcement soon. But yeah, it's gonna be awesome. So the future is looking very, very bright. But again, I think this has to do with continue to show up, right? You never know who's watching. You mentioned in terms of inspiring the youth. I always bring my sons to Black Coffee Fest, even though I don't think they pay attention half the time. They're running around. I'm always so nervous because I think they're gonna knock a vendor table down. But my oldest son, I didn't even know he was tracking that John Hope Bryant was going to be there. But then he was like, I want to see him talk. And he stayed and watched him talk. And he was just asking me questions as he was speaking. And I was like, this is this is amazing, right? Because if I would have asked him to come, he would have never came. But something, right? You continue to show, you continue to do work, and they're always watching. My youngest, he's always pointing out coffee. He's 6, and so he's always anytime there's coffee, Daddy, it's coffee, it's coffee. Um,
I love
so I do this for them, honestly, right? I do this for them.
Wow, wow, I love it. Last couple of comments then. Patricia said your CEO is like me. I jumped and figured out Alejandro, which was started off. Patricia, was he 9? I forget. Very, very young and has just done amazing, amazing things. So shout out to Alejandro and Smell of Love Candles. But she
Mhm.
says he's the one that's like, wait, let's think.
Yep, yep.
I love it. I love it. Yep, he was 9 when he started, and he's
Mhm.
here listening. Yay!
Awesome,
What's
awesome.
up? I love it. I love it. Well, I know that this conversation is just so amazing and so necessary. And Leonard, I know that you had to move some things around because you are definitely busy moving and shaking. So I sincerely appreciate you taking out the time to just come on my platform and educate and inform. What are some final? Yes, we need more of you speaking, Leonard. So I
Okay.
concur. I concur. We got to see what we Oh, you're not going to be here for the BCN conference. I was going to say, we got to get you
Uh,
on the stage.
yeah, but like I said, maybe I'll make sure the team is there.
Okay, okay,
Mhm.
okay. So what are just some quick final last minute things that you want to leave with folks as we sign off?
So I guess a couple of things in terms of like investing. Um, Keep it super simple, right? You don't have to go into complex investing. Like just automate it. You start initially with just a high savings account and then get into investing into like the stock market. But most importantly is to actually automate and to contribute, especially if you have like a 401k. Like take advantage of that free money if there's matching. Um, and the best thing to do is to start early and often. Uh, People try to time the market, but the best thing to do is just to like they call this dollar cost averaging, right? Just continue to feed that account. Um, I think it's extremely important to have the ability to invest as you open up your business because uh, it gives you confidence, right? That way, you're not necessarily always thinking about dollars and cents about the business, right? You oftentimes we don't make a decision. We don't do things because oh that may cost 20 cents or yada yada yada. You're struggling with this mental like, all these different decisions. But when you're able to learn to invest or you have this pile of money growing, you're able to be more free in your decision versus like always thinking about all the constraints. And I think that is truly helped us because we've been able to invest, right? We're able to like grow our money outside of the business, right? Whether it does good or bad. Um, and so with that, I think that just gives our business owners a lot more confidence
Yeah.
um, in terms of that. And then in terms of building, uh, I think I think one rule of advice I think is really good is to actually find a team, right? There's a lot of solo entrepreneurs, right? If you can find a partner, right? Just to alleviate some of that pressure from that one person. I call it our secret weapon. It's not perfect, but I do think that has truly helped us. The fact that there's five of us, we can lean on each other more of the emotional side of support, right? Because oftentimes you don't know how it's going to work, right? But sometimes that one person, like our CEO, we'll be fine, right? We'll figure it out. And it changes my mindset, right? I'm not focused on why it's not going to work versus like, how can I get it to work? It forces my frame of thought towards that.
Yeah.
And so you need those people in your circle, right? To kind of you have to take the risk, right? And I know it's scary, um, but you're not gonna fail unless you quit, right?
Mm.
And persistence wins all the time.
Wow.
So I'll leave it at that.
I love it. We may have to try to do these like quarterly or something because it's just such good information. And, as I mentioned, Dr. Leonard Lightfoot, you have just accomplished so much, but you're so humble, and you always give back and you're supporting us and the community. So we just love supporting you all. And we will continue whatever avenues that we have to help just bring light to just the amazing things you're doing. We will continue to do that. Thank you all that have joined in the conversations. Of course, you all, if you're watching this afterwards, of course, the links are there in the notes. So be sure to follow. And I think that is it. Once again, thank you. And thank you all for
Thank
joining.
you.
And we'll see you next time.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Bye
Bye.
bye.